Coercion is the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force or threats. It's the use of expressed or implied threats of violence or other intimidating behaviors that puts another person in immediate fear of the consequences in order to compel that person to act against his or her will. It is a pattern that includes assault, threats, humiliation, and intimidation or other abuse that is used to harm, punish, or frighten their victims. They threat with the assumption that you are at the receiving end and suffer a consequence if you go against them. Threats include emotional, mental, and physical abuse, extortion, harassment, financial abuse, malicious communications. The reason why I mention these is depending on the state that you live in, these are terms that you can use to look up to see if you can hold your perpetrator responsible for his or her actions and behaviors. I'm going to read them again to you. Emotional, mental, and physical abuse, extortion, harassment, financial abuse, and malicious communications. Emotions involved can include anxiety, fear, irritated, frustrated, helpless, grief, loneliness, rage, sadness. I use an emotional wheel in my events to identify emotions, and I would provide that to anybody who needs to look at that and hasn't had access to that before. So if that is you, reach out to me because I think it's beneficial on so many aspects that everybody has this wheel of emotion to identify emotions. I just want to make mention of that. Coercive control refers to abuse as a strategic course of oppressive behavior, meaning that battery is ongoing rather than episodic. It's based on multiple tactics like violence, intimidation, degradation, isolation, and control. It could be tough to tell when a relationship has turned abusive, especially when there are so many ways for a partner to be toxic, from constantly arguing to stalking and everything in between. But one form of psychological abuse called coercive control is particularly difficult to spot. Coercive control describes someone's need for total emotional control over their partner, and it is often gained through subtle or sneaky tactics, which makes it a little harder to notice when it's happening. As soon as coercion is involved, then the goal shifts from practical to personal, from functional to emotional, and it does not always manifest in one particular way. Coercion is an emotional power move. It is done to influence an individual on an emotional state because the individual who is using these type of tactics lacks the skills or the confidence to openly discuss, compromise, or handle not getting what they want. I wanted to also share a pretty mind-blowing statistic that I found online when it pertained to domestic violence, particularly women. An amazing statistic is that between the year 2000 and 2006, 3,200 American soldiers were killed in combat. During that same time, 3 times the amount of women died at the hands of their current or former partners, which equates to 1 every 16 hours. The reason why I mention that is when you're in abusive situations, it's very hard to think of yourself as a possible statistic, but nobody should ever think that they can't become a statistic. I just want to make note of that. So that way everybody who relates to what I'm discussing understands how serious this type of control can be. So I want to go over a few signs of what coercive control can look like. Number one would be if your partner relies on you for everything. One misconception about coercive control is that it's always aggressive. Sometimes your partner can control you through reliance instead, which includes acting as if they are incapable of taking care of themselves. When that's the case, your partner looks to you to solve all their problems. They rely on you to the point where you literally have to conduct their lives. They have no independence and see you as there to address their every need. If you have children with this partner, this is huge to identify in regards to breaking that controlling behavior. Since they seem helpless instead of domineering, it makes it difficult to spot how toxic this situation really is. But their goal is still to gain power by essentially having you do everything. This could also have you feel pity for them and guilt for wanting to leave. And that is part of the abuse tactics. What I used to always say to myself is, I have to allow them to be responsible for their own actions and decisions. And I would repeat that in my mind. And that allowed me to break free from that very specific type of control because I had experienced that. So I do want to mention that it worked for me, just always reminding myself that I am going to hold everybody responsible for their own actions and decisions. They claim to be more knowledgeable. With coercive control, one partner often ends up with too much power. Before you know it, yours might actively control your money, your time, your friends, and your individual pursuits. They might demand control, but they also might gain it by tricking you into thinking it's a good idea, which is a form of manipulation. Coercion occurs when your partner claims they are more knowledgeable or have your best interests at heart. They might explain that they are only trying to help when they are, in fact, taking away your independence. For example, they will say your friends and family are not good enough for you, so you stop hanging out with them, or claim that you're not good with money, so you give them access to your bank account, or agree to get an allowance of some sort. These are all ploys to limit your autonomy. Your autonomy means you're given right to make your decisions. These are all ploys to limit your autonomy, so your partner remains the one in control. They might even go full on gaslight mode to make you question your reality and distort your sense of reality in order to fit their storyline or agenda. They are negative about everything. Someone who is exerting coercive control is often trying to make you believe that your world is so terrible, it's about to fall apart, unless they have total control over it. They'll be that knight in shining armor. They will also cast everything in a negative light. They will doubt themselves, their relationship, and the world, and will always be on the lookout for the next problem. While it may seem like your partner's a bit pessimistic, it is important to keep an eye on this type of behavior and read between the lines. Their goal could be to scare you into relying on them or thinking that you need them more than you really do. And this is a way that they keep you in a state of anxiety and fear. You can act differently around them. Some signs of coercion come from how you feel about this person. Do you have to think, act, or feel different than you normally do when you're discussing the topic or situation? If so, it might be a sign that your partner is exerting coercive control. It's all about trusting your gut instinct, your intuition, which is, of course, easier said than done. But if you have an ongoing sense that something's wrong, you might want to consider why the relationship is always feeling so wrong. You could be always anxious. Similarly, another sign of control is the anxiety you feel as a direct result of your partner's actions. It might seem as though tension fills the air, weighing you down, or that you have to walk on eggshells whenever they're around. So ask yourself a few questions. Do you feel frustration, tension, or anxiety frequently when you are with this person in a way that you wouldn't feel around other people? If you are anxious more than not, something's wrong. Your relationship might feel like it could fall apart at any second, like the other shoe is about to drop. While all relationships have their ups and downs, there is a volatility that exists with coercive control. You might notice that you often feel uncertain about your relationship's future, or as if it might blow up at any moment. It will also feel like you must be or act a certain way in order for the relationship to work, because in the past, saying the wrong thing or being yourself resulted in a lot of negative side effects. If your relationship feels this fragile, it may be time to move on. You could feel exhausted. Let's be real, dealing with the intensity of coercive control can really take its toll on your overall well-being. So even though it's easy to get caught up in a cycle of emotional abuse, sometimes even to the point where you accept your partner's actions as normal, you may still be able to spot its side effects. Now, when I say you're accepting your partner's actions as normal, what I mean by that is that we subconsciously can normalize toxic behavior if we know that we can't get ourselves out of that situation. So if you look back and you start to recognize this very thing, just know, don't beat yourself up over the fact that you maybe have normalized abusive behaviors in the past. Just trust that it was your body's natural reaction to protecting yourself in that very moment. If you feel like you are dealing with a relationship where there may be coercive control, it's time to start considering your options. You can first try to talk to your partner about making a few changes, including looking for different ways to be more creative and make more balance between the two of you. If they did not realize they were being toxic, they should be happy to make those changes. But if they tell you that they're going to make those changes and you start paying attention and you don't notice any positive results and you are already looking to leave the relationship, reach out to an organization, a friend, a family member, or a professional for help, because you will need that extra guidance to get out of this type of situation. I can also include some resources for anybody, depending on your state. If you wanted me to look into anything that I can give you, I will definitely do that. I also wanted to share with you the emotional wheel. Let me just pull this up. I'm just going to make it a little smaller so it fits the screen a little better. All right, so this is the wheel of emotion that I use so much in so many of my events. It gives you a lot of different things to look through. So if you have any troubles identifying your emotions, this would be a great tool for you to use. That's my presentation about coercive control. I apologize for anybody who missed the event. I did have a problem with the link, but I was able to fix it, but I don't know who I lost in the interim of getting that done, which is why I wanted to record this for the members who possibly missed it. I look forward to seeing and meeting new faces the next time I have an event, and I appreciate all your support.